Elmo's had a pretty rough week, and it could get worse. Today, Congress appears poised to pass the $9 billion rescissions bill, which would eliminate funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and that funds PBS and NPR. Joining me now is Heather Norman with the Illinois Public Media Council. Heather Norman, thanks for joining us. This would be a $1 billion federal funding cut to the CPB. What do you think this would mean for small town and rural public media stations like yours, which is in Western Illinois?
It will be very tough for us. It's roughly 17% of our budget. And for some rural PBS stations, it can be as much as 50 to 75% of their budget. So it will be difficult to make up those funds on fundraising alone. So we will be looking at how to make up those funds with programming changes, and then we do not know how the national distributors will respond to this disruption should rescission pass.
And the national distributors distribute some of these NPR and PBS programs like Frontline or some of the Ken Burns documentaries. What about some of the bigger market stations, like here in Chicago, there's WTTW, which I spent many years at, and WBEZ. What's the effect going to be for them?
They will have an effect. It will be more difficult for them to have any growth. They are both losing larger amounts of money because they are in larger metro areas. But I think it will not give them as much room for error or to have any blips in fundraising. So it's not as if large market stations, they will have an easier time of it, but they will not go completely unfazed.
And we should mention to our viewers, as we tape this, the debates on amendments are still happening, but it does appear like this rescission is going to pass. Republicans have long cited what they see as a liberal bias in the reason to cut funding. Although, again, I spent many years at PBS, and I can tell you the journalists there are dedicated, fair and traditional journalists. Do you think some of these Republican concerns are valid?
I don't. I share your belief that journalists try very, very hard to present a balanced picture. And I think we've lost some idea of what media is over the time, I think, because commercial media often kind of showcases what people want to hear, or it's become more sensationalized, and public media doesn't really participate in that world. Because you don't necessarily like the point of view being presented by an expert doesn't mean it's liberal bias. I also point out that in at least NPR's case, they still have a public editor. They are the only major media outlet with a public editor. So if you do have concerns about how at least NPR is presenting a program, there is an outlet to address those concerns.
Certainly is media for the public, and there's these wonderful shows on NPR and PBS. We've got a Ken Burns documentary coming up on the revolution. We got Frontline, which does the best investigations I've ever seen. NewsHour, which I've worked for a little bit. Wonderful job. Are these institutions under threat?
They are under threat because all those institutions receive funds from distributors who receive funds from stations. And I think that's part of the message that's been lost in the national debate is there's all this talk about NPR and PBS, but really 70% of the money that's allocated to public media goes directly to public media stations. We make the decisions about what broadcast programs our audiences, our communities want to hear, and that's not the same for everyone. For example, we do not, at Tri-States Public Radio, we're a mixed format station. We still do classical music. We also play folk and jazz. That's not true for everyone. Some places are all news. Community public radio tries very hard to meet the needs of the public they serve. Absolutely. And I think that's the message getting lost in all this, and the bigger national conversation about NPR and PBS, and they will continue to exist. They just might have smaller audiences because there will be fewer stations broadcasting their content.
Well, we'll have to keep following this. And again, as we tape this, they are still debating it, but it does look like it's going to pass at some point this evening. And the work that PBS and NPR does is so essential. So we will keep following this. Heather Norman, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And when we come back, Lake Michigan's water levels are dropping, so is that a good thing or bad thing?